for January 31st, 2019, last day of January.
Do you realize there will never, ever be, in the history of the universe, another January 31st, 2019?
That's true. That's very perceptive of you. All right, so we have a wonderful studio audience with us today, so make yourselves known.
There they are.
Okay, so as people are starting to get online, they tell us where they're coming from, and I see one person online right now.
Me too.
Wow.
Oh, they're building.
No, they're starting. It starts a bit as we do our fluff and stuff to start with.
We do have some
but
fluff and
this
stuff.
This is an announcement. It's not really
Right, it's
fluff
not
and
fluff and
stuff.
stuff,
This is an
definitely.
announcement.
No.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So in April, we will be having our annual women's conference, and this year is Sacred, Embracing God's Design for Sexuality. And we are going to be talking about a lot of the very relevant topics of our day as it relates to sexuality. And so the early bird registration ends February 1st, okay? So today, tomorrow, you need to register soon at answersforwomen.org. We have an amazing lineup of speakers coming, and yesterday I actually did a Facebook Live with Heidi St. John, who some of you might know. She's very popular in a lot of homeschool circles, and she's going to be talking to us about how to talk to your kids about sexuality and the sexual revolution. And so you can catch that on either my Facebook page or Answers in Genesis Facebook page. It might be on, is it on yours
It's
too?
on my
It's on your
Facebook
Facebook page.
In fact, we put a notice on there about the conference, and I noticed in the comments somebody said, signed up, coming.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know.
And this
we
is
are
held right at the ARC site.
Yeah, so we'll be at our brand new Answer Center. We'll be the first national conference to be of Answers in Genesis to be in there, and so it is phenomenal.
Actually, it's going to be the first speaking engagement in there.
Yeah, right.
Because
That's exciting, actually.
Because the Answers Center is nearly finished, but it's going to take a bit to get everything working and
Right.
tested and all the electronics and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, there's somebody on here from Cardiff, Wales, and there's somebody on here. Have you ever heard of this place? Williamstown, Kentucky.
Hey.
Have you ever heard of
Imagine that.
Williamstown?
I have New Zealand on here.
Yeah,
So
I'm seeing
somebody
states
said,
all over the place.
hi Ken Ham, Dr. Cool Purdom, and Dr. Bodie Puns.
You're a doctor.
Apparently, for my
Wow,
puns.
you've
I
graduated.
can get an honorary doctorate in my puns.
Doctor of Puns, yeah. Dr. Bodie Puns.
Wow, the old gang is back together again.
Yep.
Ken Ham, Georgia Purdom, and Bodie the Pun Man. You're getting known for all your puns,
You know,
Bodie.
I do.
You're getting a reputation
Great.
for better
Somebody
or for
said
worse.
here, hello from 2 miles from the Creation Museum, off school due to snow day. Okay, the fluff and stuff.
Fluff and stuff, we
The
have
first item here.
Okay.
I don't even understand this item.
Okay, why this iconic Valentine's Day candy won't be on store shelves this year. So this is talking about sweethearts, the little
hearts. Yeah.
conversation hearts, that say true love or first
I mean,
kiss.
that's, when
Yeah.
you think Valentine's Day, that's what people think of when it comes to the candy.
Apparently not Ken, but
When I think Valentine's Day, I think, what is that?
it's like if you've had
Well,
Not the
kind of
candy. I mean, what is
chalky
Let
Valentine's?
me tell you about my past history of Valentine's
Oh,
Day.
no.
I got 3 stitches on Valentine's Day one time. I chipped a tooth on Valentine's Day. I got hurt in a basketball game one time. I'm telling you, Valentine's Day, I was a little nervous about it when it would come around.
I met my wife when she was 17, and apparently, this is what she tells me. She thought she'd do something special, and she gave me a Valentine's Day card, and apparently I said something like, what is that? And then
I'm
she
not
decided
surprised.
never to do it again.
I don't blame her. So anyway, so there are other companies that do put out similar types of candies. This is just the one, Spangler, who does the Dum Dum lollipops. They bought it, and they just didn't have enough time to ramp up production of them, apparently. Same thing for Necco wafers, if you've ever had that candy. They won't be out for a while, but they will be returning.
See,
Okay.
people on one side of the Mississippi River probably aren't familiar with the Necco wafer.
Somebody,
I have no idea.
somebody says here, Aussie in the US here, Ken, do you have any Aussie snake stories?
Oh,
do we
do.
ever?
There you go.
Now, this is a real fluff and stuff item.
Yep.
In Australia, a woman sat on the toilet and got bitten by a snake.
That's because
That's Australia for you.
everything is dangerous.
And this
in
is not
Australia.
toilet humor.
No,
No.
Well,
it's snake
I guess
humor.
it is.
Oh, it's not even humor.
Can't even
Oh.
go to the bathroom in Australia without it being dangerous.
Well, normally it's a spider.
I bet when she got bit, she did the Mamba dance,
Yeah.
Okay,
that was bad.
Oh man, people didn't get it.
Those you don't know,
Yeah.
All right.
is a snake, a black
I
mamba.
bet you
a dance.
next time she goes, she does a lot of looking first.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
she's okay. It was not a poisonous
that was
snake,
our
just so
flushing
you
stuff.
know.
No, there's one more.
We got
One more fluffing stuff.
Vegan bride wants to ban friends and family members who eat meat from her wedding.
This is
Okay?
also in Australia, by the way.
Yeah, and so basically she said that she doesn't want it on her conscience that she's hosting murderers on the happiest day of her life.
Murderers.
So, yeah, murderers, because they eat meat, animal meat. So, yeah, interesting. She actually got so much negative feedback, even from within the vegan community, that she totally deleted the post and decided not to go there anymore.
If she's going to say killing an animal is murdering, how many bacteria does she murder every day in her stomach and murder on her skin?
Well, but they're not part of the animal. They're. I mean, it's.
According to evolution, they're all connected.
I would agree from an evolutionary standpoint, but so are plants then. So technically, she shouldn't be eating those.
You know what?
Murdering plants.
I posted this on my Facebook and I said, Genesis 9:3. After the flood, God said, "You can eat all things," and I said, she's free to be a vegan if she wants to, but everyone can eat anything they want.
Yeah.
Question for you, Bodie. Somebody said, that Genesis 9:3 verse was provisional because God changed that when he gave food laws to the Israelites.
Well, here's the thing. You need to understand when everything started out, originally everyone was a vegetarian. Genesis 1 verse 30, Genesis 9:3, now you're allowed to eat meat. Now with the Israelites, you were allowed to eat clean meats.
Right, they still could
and
eat
it did a
meat.
further clarification. And with the New Testament, all
was
foods
about
have
It
been
didn't
made
say they
clean.
were to be
Yeah.
vegan, but
So-
that was specifically for the Israelites as a people.
Right.
That's
And,
right.
and it was to teach them separation.
That's right. And it makes you wonder, prior to the law being given to people like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, were they eating those unclean meats?
Right.
Because that was
Probably were.
acceptable at
It
the
wasn't,
time. So.
prohibited.
So there's a lot to it. Romans 14:3 is a pretty neat passage. Let not the one who eats despise the one who abstains, and let not the one who abstains pass judgment on the one who eats, for God has welcomed him. So
Hey, that's pretty good, Bodie.
reminder.
Yeah.
Somebody said here, apparently they need to eat more snake in Australia.
Apparently.
Yeah, that
Well,
makes.
that's true.
Yeah, that is true. And okay, so we have an announcement to make.
We do have an announcement to make. So, so we've been doing Answers News as a team for
2.3 million years.
2 years now. And so because we all lead very busy lives and travel away from the ministry some, we decided we needed to have a second team. So we will continue to do it, but we will also have a second team that also does this. So we'll do once a week. They'll do once a week.
In fact, they're
basically.
probably familiar with
So-
some of the people who do it
Probably,
because
yeah.
they've been filling in
Well,
and training.
Avery is going to
anyway.
be sort of the lead on the second team.
She will be the lead on the
She's our
second team.
token millennial. And then we have Brian Osborne, who's one of our speakers,
Right.
and he's a very dynamic speaker. And one of our new staff, Dr.
Gabriella
Gabby.
Haynes. Gabby.
Gabriella.
Yeah, we call her
Yeah.
Gabby sometimes. Yeah.
She speaks Portuguese,
Yep.
but she won't on this program.
not on here.
She'll speak English on this program.
She
Speaking
might every
English.
once in a
And
while.
she's got a
just
PhD in paleontology.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this is the A team, and these are the B team.
So
If they're watching, we're gonna
supposed
get
to-
responses.
Am I supposed to cut
And
my
so
hair and get a
it-
mohawk and get the jewelry on and
It's sort of like,
pity the fool?
it's
That's
these young kids,
A lot of
none of them
people
would
don't
understand.
Some people don't get that.
The
They
eight-
don't know where
that-
that came
that's
from.
an old
A
program.
couple
See,
of
there we
people
go.
got that
Yeah,
one,
the
So-
40-somethings know.
So if this is the A team, AAA, they're the B team, BBB. So some days it's going to be AAB, some days ABB, some days BAB.
I'm sure it's going
It
to be
just
all.
depends.
It's just sort of like genetics. There's going to be
Interesting.
different combinations. So,
Yeah.
but we need to have others much younger than Georgia, and
Hey!
to
Well, they are. but
I
nonetheless,
can run a pun training class for that new group.
Yeah,
just
You haven't
Brian,
done-
Brian could
you haven't done
probably
any
do
puns
that.
today. We need a pun.
He
Bodie.
already had one. He had one on the mamba. He
Oh.
talked about the snake, but not a lot of people got it. Mamba
Okay.
is a type of snake, but anyways.
No worries,
Okay.
mate.
Okay.
All right. Now let's get on to the real stuff here. Mitochondria play an unexpected role in killing bacteria. Okay, so I picked this article because I like cellular biology, and mitochondria are basically known as the energy factory of the cells. Okay, they produce our energy, and that's what basically people thought that's all they did. But because God's design is so amazing, we find they actually do more, and they actually have a role in the immune system. So in the mitochondria, they're very busy producing energy. It produces a lot of byproducts, okay, which can be dangerous, and those are called ROSs, not RUSs. Let's see if
What?
anyone
Okay.
comes.
People are
Some
laughing
people
at
get
that
it.
one.
Okay, what?
Not RUS.
Okay, what's RUS?
Rodents of unusual size from The Princess Bride, okay, for those of you that have watched that. So I thought that was funny.
Princess Bride?
That's about as old
Yeah,
as the 18.
We need to get, seriously, this, you're out of the loop. Okay, so they.
Is that like Valentine's Day?
No, we'll watch.
Okay.
We'll get you a copy of that. Okay, so it's actually reactive oxygen species, ROS. Okay.
R and ROS. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's
Yeah.
what the mitochondria produce. It's dangerous.
Now I get it.
So, the way that what they do is they find that they actually shuttle these reactive oxygen species to what are called phagosomes, and the phagosomes have the bacteria that they've eaten in them, and it breaks down the bacteria. It basically digests it. So it's a way for it to use a actually dangerous byproduct in a good way to get rid of bacteria. So
In other words,
it's playing a role in the immune system.
they actually use the word complex, and they use the word elegant, and then they use the word evolved.
Evolved.
It's interesting how all these elegant, complex pathways, supposedly evolved by chance random processes, nobody ever knows how it happens, but it must have because they're here.
That's the sad part, and they think it's for
Yeah.
really like dangerous infections, like not necessarily every infection you get, but it's a really cool thing that mitochondria are doing besides their energy work, so to speak. So there's more we're still finding out about God's
Hey,
creation. obviously.
Bodhi, hold up your mug. Someone said here, I want that dragon mug that Bodhi has. You're making me break the 10th commandment. They're coveting your mug.
They're coveting the cup.
Right.
I don't think, do we have them yet in the bookstore?
They're on their way.
That is the prototype,
That
isn't
is the
it?
prototype. In fact, this is such a good prototype. I've actually still got the sample sticker at the bottom of it. I said, I'm going to use that.
So he stole the prototype, but it's coming.
Oh, somebody did correct me. It's ROUSs, rodents of unusual size. Okay, close enough.
Oh,
but anyway.
ROU.
see-
Now I know what you're
Oh,
talking about.
oh,
It's
sure,
Princess
yeah.
Bride, right?
Okay.
Princess Bride?
I already said that, yes. And somebody said I don't think they exist. That comes from The Princess Bride, too. All right. Ancient stone circle actually built in 1990s by Scottish farmer.
I got a
This is
kick out of
totally
this.
you, Bodhi. Yep.
Okay, so I've been to Stonehenge, and there's a number of stone circles all across northern parts of Europe, especially in the British Isles and a number of different places. In fact, we find some of these over here in the Americas. There's a underwater stone circle at Traverse City in Michigan, and there's one out at Bighorn, more like the medicine wheel. But, we do see some of that technology transfer, and it's probably some ancient peoples that have migrated and that sort of thing. But we think Stonehenge, that's probably the most popular
Right.
one. Of course, there's Woodhenge, there's one in Clare County, they're all over the Avebury. But what's interesting about this one, people came across this one like, oh, wow, look at this ancient one, here's another one. And
We talked about it on Answers
yeah,
News when it came out.
Yeah, so they were studying it, and come to find out a farmer did it in the 1990s. But he did a really good job and faked them all out, apparently. Like,
Yeah.
I built that.
So now let me ask you a serious question. The original Stonehenge, isn't it possible it was also built by farmers?
Probably was.
There you are.
Probably wasn't built by politicians. It would have never gotten finished.
Well, that's true.
Okay, so Georgia, somebody said here, I want you to explain this to me. My name is Emilio Montoya. You killed my father, prepare
Prepare
to die.
It's from The Princess Bride.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
But it shows you that it's very difficult to date these kinds of things. Like they did date it and said, oh, it's several thousand years old. And then the farmer who originally owned the land said, nope, I did it just a few years ago.
It just shows you how they can
It's hard.
misinterpret things.
really
Hey, somebody here said, my husband asked for one of Ken Ham's favourite candies from Australia for Valentine's Day. It's golden colour and kind of crunchy and covered with chocolate. What is it called?
Oh, is that one of those honeycomb candies?
It's a honeycomb.
It's
like a-
called
like a
Violet
violet
Crumble
crumble?
Bar.
Oh, those are my favorite.
There's also a crunchy, isn't it? There's
Well,
crunchy.
Crunchy is the Cadbury. Yeah.
Crunchy's a different type.
Crunchy.
The
But it's a
Violet
similar
Crumble Bar
thing.
is the
Violet
original.
Crumble, those are my favorite from
Yeah.
So,
Australia. All right. Government allows South Carolina foster care group to keep Protestants only policy. Protestants only policy. So this is actually a really bit of good news. This is about a foster care agency known as Miracle Hill Ministries that does a lot of foster care, and they were basically being told by the state of South Carolina, you can't function because you're only allowing married couples defining marriage as between a man and a woman who go to church to foster and then subsequently adopt children. And they said you can't do that, and they tried to go against that, and they won.
Well, the interesting thing is, here you have a non-profit organisation that has a particular mission, and their mission is to have Protestant families adopt children, because the state actually has too many children to put them into foster care. And so many different Christian organizations, different denominations, have developed all sorts of organizations, hospitals, other things over the years.
Well, that's just natural for Christian outreach.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have a particular mission. But what we're finding more and more and more, like what happened with Karen Pence, the wife of the vice president recently. She has been associated with a Christian school for many, many years. And suddenly Huffington Post thought they had this great revelation that they could reveal it to the public, that this Christian school actually teaches what the Bible teaches about marriage and so on.
And this is no different. This is a Christian ministry wanting to do Christian ministry.
Right,
and,
exactly.
The state stepped in and was trying to stop them in certain instances here.
And it's like Answers in Genesis. If you read through our employee handbook, we are a Christian ministry. We have a statement of faith that is Christian.
It's our identity.
It's our identity.
Who we are as an organization.
And actually, it's interesting. We employ people who have to sign our statement of faith. And so they have to agree to things like, for instance, they have to agree that the only legitimate marriage is one man and one woman. And the atheists are so upset. You have no right to be able to do that. And we actually went to court over that, and we won in federal court on the basis of 1964 Civil Rights Act, Title VII. We're a religious organization. We have a right to employ people who agree with our statement of faith. Just like atheists. If they want to employ an atheist for an atheist organization, that's what you'd think they'd do, right?
Yeah. Because see what happened, it's actually Title VI for the foster care agencies and other programs like that. President Obama had said, well, you basically can't discriminate on the basis of religion, sexual orientation, and gender identity, which is what hurt a lot of these agencies like this. So they've now had to fight and come up against it. But it's so good to see that they won this case.
In the Obama era, E-R-R-O-R, no, E-R-A, in the Obama era, he brought in a lot of regulations that were very anti-Christian. And they were really discriminating against Christians and really undermining religious freedom in this nation.
So, it's interesting. The Americans United for the Separation of Church and State got involved and made some statements here. And, of course, they're criticizing, how dare these religious, people are basically involved. When it comes to our most vulnerable children, they say, those most in need of loving homes. And to me, that is such a double standard because Americans United, they're the same people who support abortion and the killing of babies, just like that. But, at the same time, if they're so concerned about these children, why don't they start doing fundraising to start foster places? We could use more.
Because you don't see a lot of total atheist groups that have foster care agencies. Because they have no basis for it, no foundation for it, other than just it might be a good thing to do, right? We do because the Bible says we're to care for the fatherless.
It's very Christian of them to care here.
That we have a basis. This is a command.
They care that a Christian organization actually does care and does something about it. That's what they care about.
Well, I said, people they're not thinking through this because I'm going to tell you right now, if you say that these Christian organizations can't exist and can't do what they do, you're going to be amazed at how much society changes as a result of that, because you're going to have a lot of kids that don't have a home then. You're going to have a lot of people not being taken care of because this is what Christians do.
Or they won't be looked after in the right way and be totally dysfunctional and lead to all sorts of problems, which is what we're seeing in many places. It sort of reminds me of like the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the American Atheists attack us for what we do at Answers in Genesis Ark Encounter Creation Museum. Do they employ over 1,000 people? Do they bring millions of dollars into the economy that actually comes into the state and helps local businesses? Do they do any of that?
They don't
of course
do that.
not.
No. All right, American Bible Society loses staffers with new scriptural affirmation policy. So we talked about this back in 2017 when it first started to be enacted. And basically they said that they were going to have an affirmation of biblical community that said they were to abstain from sex before marriage, attend church, and define marriage as between a man and a woman. So they basically have until tomorrow to sign the statement, and if not, they lose their job.
See, what I would say to the American Bible Society is then, it's a reminder of how we need to be very specific with the statement of faith. And this is a challenge to the church, because suddenly you got these people, they realize they can't sign that statement of faith, right? And so they can't be in the organization. And one of the things that we need to be doing, like at Answers in Genesis, in our employee handbook, one of the things that we've had to do as we go on is to actually modify our statement of faith and so on to account for where the culture is at. It's not because the Bible's changed, but to make very explicit some of the things in the Bible that normally you would think, oh, Christians would believe that. You know, it won't be long, and our whole statement of faith will just be the whole Bible anyway. You know, you just have to write it out like that. But for instance, look how we've worded this now. The only legitimate, this is our statement of faith that everyone has to sign for Answers in Genesis to work here. The only legitimate marriage sanctioned by God is joining of one naturally born man and one naturally born woman. We originally didn't have the words naturally in there. Now we've added that because of the whole gender issue and what they're saying. And then exclusive union as delineated in Scripture, God intends sexual intimacy to only occur between a man and a woman. And so we go on, and we've also added any form of immorality, and we list all those there, or any attempt to change one's gender or disagreement with one's biological gender is an offence. Notice how we've had to update our statement of faith because of where the culture's at, to make sure that we are laying down the right foundation. And the same in regard to the abortion issue in our own statement of faith. All human life is sacred and begins at conception, defined as the moment of fertilization. We even have to spell it out really carefully. The unborn child is a living being created in the image of God. And the abortion of an unborn child, or the act of taking human life through euthanasia. So we've added in euthanasia because that's becoming a big issue. I tell you, we have to keep up to date on that, and we'd encourage churches. They need to be very specific, but we're very specific when it comes to Genesis, about 6 literal days, a young earth, a global flood, no death before sin. Most churches don't have that sort of specific wording in their statement of faith. And I'm going to suggest they need to. In fact, I would suggest people go and look at the Answers in Genesis statement of faith on our website. It's very detailed, because that's the sort of statement of faith we need to protect Christian organizations.
I mean, it might surprise people that at the American Bible Society, there were people working there that actually opposed the Bible. And you know, that surprises people, but that's why you need that strong statement of faith.
And they realize that, and I'm glad they changed it. It's good.
And I guess about 36 people or so have quit since that time. But, you know, really what it is, that goes to show that people were just there for a job, not that they cared about the Bible or what the Bible said. They actually opposed it. When it comes down to it.
And one of the individuals who has left as a result of this, he claims to be a homosexual. He says, well, I was no longer wanted, I was no longer good enough. And I'm like, whoa. All of us are sinners. All of us need the grace of God. All of us need salvation through Jesus Christ. It isn't about being good enough. It's that you're doing something that is in direct opposition to a Bible, and yet you work for a Bible society. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't work.
By the way, this Bible Society has moved ahead with plans to open a $60 million museum on Independence Mall in Philadelphia, on the ground floor of its headquarters. The Faith and Liberty Discovery Center is slated to open next year to demonstrate how the Bible has changed those who changed America. So here's an organization that's promoting the Bible, obviously. Well, they have every right to say their employees have to agree with the Bible. And here's these people getting all upset. It's ridiculous.
It is. All right. How beauty is making scientists rethink evolution. So one of the things that evolutionists have a hard time, well, they have a hard time explaining a lot of things, but this thing in particular is hard. And that is the fact that certain things in nature are so beautiful, okay? Like peacocks, not you. Like
I was trying, come on,
I know
give me
what
a
you
little
were trying.
credit.
So, and they talk specifically about the bowerbird and its nest-making abilities and its courtship display.
I don't think pigs are beautiful.
Well, I didn't say everything, okay? They said something.
Slugs aren't the prettiest.
Well, when God made everything, it was, because he said it was all very good.
And we still see remnants of that, so to speak. I mean, in
we even see.
I bet that lady didn't think that snake was pretty in the toilet.
No.
We even see remnants of very good just looking up here at the table. The three of us.
No joke. So what they're saying is it's hard to explain this by natural selection, because a lot of times having bigger feathers or investing a lot of energy into making a nest would seem to go against energy for survival and energy to get away from predators and protection from predators. So how does that evolve? How does that exist?
It's interesting when you read this. The bowerbird defies traditional assumptions about animal behavior as a creature that spends hours meticulously curating a cabinet of wonder, grouping his treasures by color and likeness, single-beakedly, builds something far more sophisticated than many celebrated examples of animal tool making. The bowerbird's bower is, at least one scientist has argued, is nothing less than art. And they look at this and they say, how do you explain that? And from an evolutionary perspective, how do they explain it?
It's difficult. I mean, Darwin, here's what the article says. It says, Darwin did not think it was necessary to link aesthetics and survival. Now, what's interesting is a lot of the people went against Darwin and said, well, no, we don't really agree with Darwin on this. And so the theory of beauty was largely abandoned. But what's happening now is as a result of studying this stuff, they're going back saying, well, maybe Darwin he was onto something here.
Because Darwin believed in sexual selection is what it's called. It's a different kind of offshoot of natural selection, that certain things evolve just because females preferred this in males, and so those males tended to mate and have more offspring, and so you tended to get those traits then more and more. Right. And the idea is, so what they tried to do is say, well, those traits also mean it's very healthy, but they can't really find that connection. So it's still very challenging to explain from either perspective.
From an evolutionary perspective, if there's no God and everything came about by chance random processes, where'd the idea of beauty come from?
Well, that's what they
borrowing
question
that from the
in
Bible.
here. Right.
That's what they don't realize. They're getting it from the Bible. God is beautiful.
Right.
And, we are made in the image of God, and God makes all things beautiful in their time and that sort of thing. You see, beauty is a Christian concept.
Yeah, why should we think about such a thing as beauty if if everything happened by natural processes?
Well, they even said, how do you explain the fact that humans perceive beauty, that we do think something is beautiful? I mean, how do you explain that?
Somebody said here in a comment, beauty should be irrelevant in evolutionary thinking.
It should be. It should be.
But they know it's there, so they're trying to explain it.
But think about this. You see, atheists will often use words like good and bad and right and wrong.
Yep.
Right.
How can they do that? How do they decide what's good and bad and right and wrong? And then how can they use words like beauty?
Well, they did try to explain how this may have evolved in humans. The human perception of beauty emerges from a set of ancient adaptations. So they say, for example, the fact that we intrinsically appreciate certain landscapes, it comes from because the fact that it resembles the Pleistocene savannas where humans evolved.
Oh, of course.
I was like,
I should have thought of that.
They probably arrived at that by flipping a coin. I mean, seriously, that's purely an arbitrary story.
Yeah, it really is. So it's a very long article to say they don't know.
I was thinking about doing a movie called Bodie and the Beast.
Okay.
I hope you're not referring to your wife.
No, if anyone else calls her a beast.
But you're allowed, huh? Okay. Ancient...
Because she's our oldest daughter.
I know.
Wait till I tell you what you said.
Better be careful. All right. Ancient Antarctic ice sheet collapse could happen again, triggering a new global flood. So at least they're saying it's a new global flood, which means they're admitting that there was a global flood.
Oops, they're not supposed to do that. That's very Christian.
Yeah. So they're basically trying to say
Actually, they're happy to talk about a global flood as long as it's not mentioned in the Bible. If it's mentioned in the Bible, how can you talk about a global flood?
Right.
Or maybe Mars.
Yeah, they're talking about one that happened during the last melting of a gigantic ice sheet in Antarctic that supposedly raised sea levels by 30 feet around the world.
And they think that's going to happen again and cause a global flood.
Yeah,
and 30 feet.
That's not a global flood.
Yeah, but
not even close.
This,
I'm not worried here in
this
Kentucky.
is all to do again with climate change.
Yep.
We had climate change this morning. It was down to -6 when I got up.
-4 when I was coming in.
Yeah. So, but here's a statement they make. So, and by the way, we believe in climate change. Do you know creationists believe in climate change?
Yeah.
The climates have changed ever since the flood.
Yeah. Well,
They
probably
have.
even since the fall a little bit.
Yeah, and because of sin and the curse, and particularly the flood, there's been climate change. Of course there is. But man-made climate change, well, that's a whole different thing. There's so much that could be said about that. We've got articles on our website about that. But look, listen to this statement. Obviously, climate change 125,000 years ago was natural, not human-caused as it is today. Now, I read that sentence, I said, well, wait a minute. If it's got something to do with human, it's not natural. If it's to do with anything else, it is natural. From an evolutionary perspective, isn't it all natural?
That's a good point.
Yeah, that is a good point.
And from an evolutionary perspective, if man evolved, and if man was actually causing dramatic climate change, which would say that's not true, but if man is causing climate change today, then that's natural and a part of evolution. It shouldn't. Well, why should they stop man doing what he's doing? Because it might be the next evolutionary progression.
Yep.
Right.
I would agree. See, you made an excellent point.
Hey, you know, I want to bring up something here. False prophets. You know, I mean, as soon as you hear false prophets, you automatically think some of these people on the fringe of Christianity that make some false claims about Jesus' return, whatever it might be. But do you realize there are false prophets even out there in the secular world?
Oh, yeah.
There are people who made false claims about global warming that have come and gone that were dead wrong.
Well, they act
remember
like
Al Gore?
everyone
False prophet.
accepts it, and not
I
every
know.
scientist does.
People don't realize Al Gore was one of these big
Yep,
gurus
that's a good
of climate
example of it.
change, and if you look at the video he did and what he prophesied would come, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
Yeah. And he's not
You know,
even
and
a
other people are
scientist,
still
so-
jumping on that same bandwagon, you know, throwing dates out there,
Yeah.
10, 12 years or things like that. You know, we need to watch out for that kind of stuff and call it what it is. That's false prophecy.
Yep. All right, let's do one more here. Doctors induce 25% of Dutch deaths. Okay, so this is happening in the Netherlands, obviously, and what they're saying now is looking at the statistics. Okay, 25% of Dutch deaths are induced or caused by doctors. 25%.
That's a quarter of them.
Yeah, that's a quarter.
Wow.
It's a warning that when they legalize euthanasia, it unlocks a door and they say, oh, it's only going to be used in certain specific circumstances. But you know what happens? They push the door wide open.
Well, yeah, and that
You
became
looked it
their
up.
law of the land. You know, if you go back before April 1st, 2002, they had some instances of euthanasia, but it became the law of the land in the Netherlands then. And when they came out with that, they said, well, the doctor has to say there's no other option. The patient has to totally agree, and that's it. That's all it's going to be. Oh boy, that just opened a door, and it really has jumped open.
Hey, Georgia, I'm CEO.
You
so
can decide. You want to go.
I'm going to overrule here.
You're going to overrule and
because
go over
I
time.
can't be here Monday because
I
I'm
know.
away Monday. But I really wanted to show this video.
Okay,
So
go for it.
can you quickly explain that? We'll go a couple of minutes over here.
California State Senator bans use of he and she during committee hearings. So this is, again, a California legislator. They're saying they're recognizing non-binary designation as a gender and banning the use of he and she in hearings. They're now going to use the phrase they and replace other designations so that it's gender-neutral designation of they.
So they're being anti-binary. You
So-
can't use he, she,
So let's
her,
listen
him.
to
None of that.
Let's listen to the Senate Judiciary Chair, Hannah-Beth Jackson, as she announced this in California.
And our first order of business is to approve the committee rules. I'd like to note in respecting the fact that we are now a state recognizing the non-binary designation as a gender, he and she, we are now merging them so that we are using what my grammar teacher would have had a heart attack over. We are using the phrase they and replacing other designations so that it's a gender-neutral designation of they, and we've done that through most of basically that's the primary reforms and revisions to the committee rules. So, and I
watching.
appreciate Senator Monning observing that the chair is she, but in the spirit of gender neutrality for the rules of this committee, it now designates the chair as they. So the world is a different place. My grammar teacher's long gone, and I won't be hearing from her.
Oops.
Okay, she went on, and then she used she, her, he, his in the rest of her talk 14 times.
You can't get away from it. That's the
You
problem.
can't. It's part
Okay.
of our
It
language.
makes no sense when you start doing
And to end up on, I want to see if our studio audience and everyone watching, and they can comment on this, can you translate this now according to how we're to speak in California, just to see how good you are. They travelled to they's house. When they arrived, they saw they were sitting with they who was reading a book to they.
Yep, that's what
That
you
makes
end
sense,
up
huh?
with.
So
Let's translate
this
it.
is the translation. She travelled to her brother's house. When she arrived, she saw he was sitting with their grandmother who was reading a book to her niece. Now, you see, the top is what's
Yeah.
going to happen. Can you imagine that's what Californians are going to talk
That's called
like?
Californianese.
Yeah.
I'm going to invent a word for it, Californianese.
Yep.
But this is what they're trying to say now, to use. See what happens when you abandon biological reality and you abandon the Bible as a basis of absolute. This is
Language
stupidity.
now
Yeah,
makes no
it is.
sense.
It's
I mean,
stupidity.
Languages like Spanish and French and a
They-
host of
yeah.
others, they're masculine and feminine. I mean, what do you
Feminine.
do with those languages?
I don't know.
And
It's a
that's
mess.
just
They've already
crazy.
talked about that in France.
Yeah. Well, we're about out of time. I do want to tell you, we have a series called Best of British, and a couple of those talks, one are by Dr. Andy McIntosh, one from Dr. Stuart Burgess, both of which are professors over in the UK. One is Science, Mathematics, and Beauty, and the other is a design argument where Dr. Burgess in that one particularly takes a significant look at beauty. So both of these are talking about beauty from a Christian viewpoint and what's wrong with that in the secular viewpoint. I know we talked about that here briefly.
Hey, someone from Australia just commented, "They silly."
They silly.
Yeah. All right. Well, on Monday will be our new, so to speak, the B team, so to speak, will be here for Answers News. So we will see you then.
All right, thanks. God bless, guys.
Thank you. It's just a blessing having you here. We hope you come back to other things like we did in the museum.